Hello, welcome to my podcast. Today I want to talk about fighting. Fighting is something really insidious in relationships. It just starts really small, and before you know it, mostly you're just fighting about everything and bickering. Fighting comes from two places. It comes from your own anger. So maybe you're angry about your life, about things that have happened, and you're upset. And then you pick fights about everything because you need a way to vent the anger. Just have a fight with everyone about crazy stuff. It can also come from anger within your relationship, that you're angry with your partner. And I think if you start looking at those two areas first, you'll better pick if it's your stuff or our stuff, because it's going to be one or the other. When I worked out that it used to be my stuff, like I was angry about something else, I would just say, look, it's me, just ignore me. I'll try and do some work on my stuff, and it's not us, it's me. When it's anger with the us, then you really need to sit down and work out what the anger is about. Anger is usually expressed in fighting. This is how we express it. Underneath the anger there can be hurt and quite a lot of emotional pain from what's happened to us, but we will express it in an angry way, and we will be bitter and resentful. Sometimes we can have rage, which is quite a violent, dangerous anger, and also we will have hateful thoughts. This all comes in that group. And if you've come out of a difficult life, you will have residual anger. So if you've come out of a difficult family life, or you've had a lot of trauma or difficult things happen to you that were unfair and people were unkind, then you might actually have a lot of stored anger. It's easy just to blame our partner, just blame them for everything, because what we're doing is we're not taking responsibility and we just offload it onto the other person. But once you start asking that question, is it me? Am I actually just angry right now with everything? Or is it us? You'll find it actually easier because you've got two areas to work on. If you come up with it's me, then you really need to address your anger and you need to let it go. It's no good hanging on to it. It's going to just fester. It's the most poisonous thing for the body. It's more poisonous than eating bad food, some people believe, in terms of the energetics of what it does to your body. And even modern science now is starting to realise that anger can be implicated in heart problems, high blood pressure, colitis, migraine, lots and lots of things. Ask yourself the question, who am I angry with? And start writing it out, start journaling it out. You don't have to go to that person particularly. And quite often you might find it's something from the past. You're still angry with a friend who wouldn't call you back and dumped you. You might be angry with what's happening at work. Work out what the things are and then try to process them, and then do some work at letting it go. Because you need not to put it in your relationship, because it's your love relationship and you don't want it tarnished with anger. Then once you've done that work, you might want to talk to your partner, because possibly they're angry about other things in their life that they're also not dealing with. And you can both talk about this, that when people are venting, because that's what they're often doing, it's not really about the situation. They're just using it as a way to get it all out, to let it all out, to let off some steam. If the anger is between the two of you, you need to start working out why you are angry with your partner. It will not be about the dishes or that they didn't feed the dog. They are just the signposts for you. It's never about the small stuff, really, because underneath the small stuff is the big stuff. And usually it's because we're not feeling nourished and loved by them. Maybe we're not having enough quality time together. Maybe we don't feel appreciated by them anymore and they're taking us for granted. And sometimes we don't feel that they listen to us. It's really important to listen to your partner. Don't interrupt, just let them tell you what they feel, then you tell them back what you thought you heard, which is always a good communication skill, because what you thought you heard and what they said, sometimes two different things. And you need to talk about what you're angry with them about, and it could be like 5 years ago when they didn't remember your wedding anniversary. It can be really dumb stuff, but you really need to work at that, because then you can stop fighting with each other. Because what you're doing, instead of expressing it through the relationship with one another and making life really horrible for you and anyone who lives near you or with you, you're actually going, okay, I'm really angry when you did that, and I'm holding a grudge. I need to talk to you about it because I haven't quite obviously forgiven you for it, and I need to do some work on myself to let it go. You also need to promise not to do that anymore because it makes me angry and it's too hurtful. In a place of anger, you will not get resolution. You just won't. It's only after you've had the big fight you can get some, possibly, but the anger gets in the way. If you're fighting all the time, you need to just stop doing it. It's like a habit. When you first met, you weren't fighting all the time. You were coming from love, but now you're coming from anger. Instead of coming from your heart, you're coming from your liver all the time. It feels good. It's a powerful place to come from. You tell them off and you tell them this and you tell them that. And it's sort of like, in a weird way, we think we're taking our own power back, but instead we're just destroying that love relationship. It's more important to sit down and say how you feel and what you've been angry about and what you were hurt about. The person just has to listen. That's all. Because really all you want to do is be heard. You want to be heard by them and you want them to stop doing it. Many people get into this cycle of fighting. It like becomes really commonplace and they stop making an effort to be loving to each other. They just don't be loving to each other anymore. They just come from this nasty place and they come from it all day and every day. Everything's a nag, everything's a pick. You're never going to please them. They're never going to please you. You don't focus on what's good in your relationship. You don't focus on the love. You just get into this like cycle and this pattern of anger and resentment. And usually there's a lot of resentment and bitterness. When we tell our partner why we're upset and what upset us and what made us angry, we get it out. But we're getting it out like in a place of love. And you just talk about I, as I always say. You don't talk about you, because they'll go on the defensive. Just like if they spoke to you like that, you would go on the defensive. You say, I'm not coping with this, I'm not coping with that, I'm uncomfortable with this, it really upsets me. When this happens, I can't deal with it. You need to be really brutally honest. It's important if you want to save your love relationship, because what's happening is your love relationship is basically just drowning under all of the anger and the fighting and the nitpicking and the screaming and the yelling. We usually find that when people are in a conflict like this, it's a power struggle. They each want power. They each want to have their own way, particularly when it's kind of an equal fight, not the fight where one person's disempowering the other. That's a different fight. And you need to get your power back in a different way. You need to have your personal power, and that's to have a voice and to be able to speak, to talk to someone. If you don't feel safe or that you can do it with this person, you might need to get help. And there's so much help around. And it might even be a good idea for you to go on your own to counselling first, perhaps, and then perhaps your partner will go to their counsellor or you go to one together. This can be solved. You didn't fight at the beginning. So the fact you're fighting now means there's a change in the dynamics. You've got to shift the dynamic and bring it back to love. Try and also do lots of lovely things together. Go out for some romantic dinners, go to the beach and walk along the beach and watch the sunset, go for a drive together, maybe go on a little weekend away, get the family looked after by grandma and grandpa and go away for the weekend and get a lovely spa bath and take champagne and chocolates. You need to actually shift it, so you have to actually do it in your physical life. You can't just go, oh, I'm not going to fight anymore and then harbour all the resentment and the grudges, because it'll come seeping out and you'll get really sarcastic and say really smarty pants things. It'll come out. It'll be all digs all the time. You have to re-establish your love relationship. So while you having the conversation and releasing your own anger, talking to your partner, then you have to do the physical stuff, which is to bring it back to the love relationship. And that means also physically being closer to each other, being in the bedroom a lot more, to reconnect on that level, because what's happening, you're connecting all the time on the anger wavelength. You're not connecting, and which has got power. The anger's to do with power. So you're actually having a power relationship now, and you're not having a love relationship. And the love relationship is being killed and suffocated under the power relationship. So you've got to switch it and bring that love relationship back in and do more of those things and be more loving to each other, say more loving things to each other, make loving time together, and then stop fighting and start talking. because fighting is when we're not talking. And sometimes, honestly, it's better to be quiet. If your partner's in a really crappy mood when they come home from work and they're yelling and screaming and being awful, but they're not dangerous, they're just being awful, just be quiet. Be quiet, make them a nice drink. Be quiet, make them a nice dinner. Be quiet and sit them outside in the moonlight. Put some calming music on. Put some essences on. You don't even have to say anything. You can just sort of do the background work, I call it, where we set it up. You will often find people know that they've done it because they'll actually come back later and say, oh, yeah, sorry, I was really horrible yesterday. I'm sorry about that. And then you go, oh, well, you are upset and angry. We all get like that. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. And when people are angry, the best thing is not to throw any more kerosene on the fire. You're already angry, try to dissipate it and make it easier for you. If you're in any abusive relationship, you need to get help. And it might even be police help. So don't put up with being beaten or hurt or violated in any way. You need to get really good help here. This isn't where you just go and write your journal. I'm just talking to people who are having normal relationships in the sense that we're fighting all the time, but it's not actually really dangerous. Coming for love, I always keep saying this to people, you just got to come from love, come through your heart. It will stop you fighting. You'll start talking to each other, and that's really what you want, because under all that arguing and fighting, there's hurt. Because both of you can see your relationship's just going to crap, and you're both now getting more and more unhappy with the relationship and with one another and in your life, and you don't need this. Love's stressful enough. Try and find a way to, one, find out who's doing it. Is it you? Is it us? To get rid of it if it's you, and try and release it using all your modalities, like I do tapping and things like that, and self-hypnosis to let it go. And then sit down and talk to your partner what you're angry about, what you're upset about, what you're hurt about, where the pain's coming from in your relationship. And then look at how you can fix it. And get professional help there if you need it. And then start building up the love part. More of the love part. Keep talking to each other. Because what you're trying to do is change the dynamic of it, so the love dynamic is stronger, which will start quelling the anger. Because when we're being loving to people, there's no anger in it. When we're, giving them a big kiss, or we've made them a beautiful cake and we're icing it and bringing it in, there's no anger in that. And that's what you want to create, because your real life, in real relationships, has to be actions. And your actions have to come from love, not power and anger. This is really a big one in a relationship, because this is the one that is the silent killer of relationships, because in the end, people, all they do is fight. They will fight about anything and everything. And then they're in a power relationship, and you don't want to have one of those, because it's not going to go well, and it's also going to make both of you sick in some way. It's emotionally damaging, really emotionally damaging, and it really messes with the body when you're fighting all the time. It's really not good to be so kind of inflamed, because that's what anger is. It's like an inflammation emotionally. Work on it, fix it, come back to love. Just keep coming back to love. You can do it. So I'm sending you lots of love, obviously, and lots of healing.